This hour of news and views was sponsored by Africa Muslim Agencies. Africa Muslim Agency is a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. It is 9:58 news and views wrapping up now with our final interview of the morning, and that is with energy expert and CEO at Sinan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sinan Energy, and that is you, Mohammed Madhi. We're going to be talking about, I hope that because of the elections, we haven't been lulled into a comfort zone by having uninterrupted power cuts over so very many days. Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam to yourself and the viewers.
Have I pronounced your company's name correctly?
Yeah, it's Sinan. So Sinan, just as a matter of interest, is the architect, the Turkish architect who built the Suleymaniye Mosque, for example.
Oh, subhanallah for that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him abundantly. You are an energy expert yourself and you are the CEO. We understand, obviously, the Minister of Energy has made this very massive pronouncement that Eskom has surpassed the 70% energy availability milestone. Some people might be very skeptical, as am I, wondering if it's not an election ploy. What exactly is going on for the past so many days? Is this trend going to continue, or do you think it is an election ploy?
Well, let's look at the fundamentals to begin with. The reasons that we had load shedding is we have an aging generation fleet that had not been maintained properly and that was performing, with constant breakdowns, unplanned outages, etc. What has happened is that the minister has been able to put in certain measures, and we have to commend the fact that there have been certain measures. However, I think the majority of the efforts have not been directed optimally. And we can explore that a little bit more. So, because of this aging fleet, this was the fundamental reason behind load shedding and the lack of maintenance. That has not gone away. It's not going to go away overnight. We are going to continue with that. There'll be ups and downs, of course. And what Eskom is currently doing is ensuring that all generation sources are operating as much as possible, including the open cycle gas turbines. So the question we really have to ask, if Eskom has an energy availability factor of over 70%, which it does, it did breach that for a little while, does this mean that the diesel spend is going to come down? And if the answer is yes, then we need to hold those officials accountable to that. Similarly, with the 70% mark, we now need to hold officials accountable for that. Anyone that says this is going to be the new norm, the new baseline, they need to be held accountable for that. And if it's not the case now or after the elections, they need to be held responsible for their actions and face the consequences. So I don't think it's going to last. I think we've had a combination of good factors, good weather, reduced demand, increased new generation capacity by the private sector, and all of these have led to this ending of load shedding for a period of time.
So we can't be jumping up and down with happiness thinking that this is the status quo going forward. You mentioned the magic word there. You spoke about diesel. This question was put to Ramaphosa, and this is how he responded. I quote, "There could be nothing further from the truth." Well, the question obviously was the burning of more diesel. So he responded, there could be nothing further from the truth. This is anchored by these machines that are at Kusile and many other power stations. What anchors this recovery is the performance of these coal-fired power stations. Your thoughts?
Look, there is some truth to the fact, there is a fair amount of truth to the fact that the power stations have been performing better. Whether that is going to be a consistent, ongoing performance is an open question mark. But the best way for Ramaphosa to have answered that question was to be transparent about the actual amount of diesel usage. And right now, we don't know what the spend was on diesel usage, and that needs to be clear. So we can correlate the existing lack of load shedding with the amount of spend on diesel and the open cycle gas turbines. So the question has to be asked, why is government not forthcoming? Why is the minister, why is Eskom, government, main shareholder, not forthcoming about the exact amount of diesel spend on the open cycle gas turbines over the last 40 plus days? With that number, it's no longer speculation. Then it would be very clear. This was the expenditure on diesel, and it was either less or more than it was in the past. So we have to get that number. And I think the media has to agitate more to elicit that response from government.
Mohammed, what difference does it make if we get that figure? I've heard that it runs in the billions. I stand corrected. How would that then impact on our current situation regarding power supply is concerned? Is that suggesting, if we get the exact figure, would that then suggest that our electricity is now way too expensive, totally unaffordable? And what would the plan B be then regarding the situation, given, and you mentioned this as well, given that winter is just around the corner and demand would be much, much higher?
Yes, that's a great question. So the first part of the question is, what difference would it make? I think it would be a very clear, factual piece of information whereby the public and all interested stakeholders can gauge the actual performance level of Eskom. Without this number, it's speculation in terms of what is the actual performance level of Eskom. So that's the first thing, very important, and also something that can be pointed to. So anytime any official or anyone else says that we are in now a very stable situation, we can point to the fact that, it's maybe because or maybe not of the open cycle gas turbines. That's the first part. The second part of the question, though, is what happens in terms of the plan B and what's the alternative? And given where we are as a country, and given the fact that we are a few days away from the election, I'm very surprised that there hasn't been more pressure on political parties from the public to insist and to see and to demand what the plan would be for incentives for the private sector to continue this phenomenal trend that we've seen of private sector power generation. This has made a huge difference. We've built in excess of 5,000 megawatts as a country of private sector power generation outside of Eskom. So willing buyer, willing seller basis, private sector, what we call behind the meter. So that needs to be accelerated. That is undoubtedly going to play a very huge part in terms of alleviating the power crisis in this country. And the way government or any political party aspiring to government can accelerate that is by accelerating, increasing, and expanding the incentives associated with those private sector power plants and the construction thereof.
Let's talk about the private householders. A lot of people, and of course this does talk to affordability. It's a small minority of people who can afford to go the solar route, but those numbers could also increase, in due course. We've also heard talks by government suggesting that householders can then sell electricity back to the grid. Do you see that as an immediate possibility sometime in the future? I mean, people have really invested large sums of money to put solar, into their homes so that they can be that much more comfortable. Small businesses too have invested, hoping that government will come to the party at some point and give them some form of a rebate that will make a difference.
Look, so we have had an incentive scheme aimed primarily at businesses, commercial industrial businesses. The households can make a difference. It's not a huge impact. Unfortunately, of course, it helps each individual household if they can feed back into the grid, and that is dependent on the particular municipality in which they reside and if they are receiving power from that municipality. So each municipality has the discretion around what we call net metering. On the other hand, what can make a really big difference is the commercial and industrial sector, large manufacturing, heavy industry, those kinds of businesses that use an enormous amount of power. Of course, the mines and related industries as well. So when the incentives are geared towards that sector, and not forgetting the households and the small businesses, which are important sources of employment. That's what makes the difference. But the other trend over and above the solar, so you've spoken about solar, and you're quite right. The advantage you have about solar is that the recovery on investment is fairly quick, whether you're a household owner, a homeowner, or a small business or a large business. But what's really made a difference, especially to load shedding and avoiding diesel costs, is battery energy storage and large scale, specifically large scale battery energy storage. Now, people are not familiar with what battery energy storage is. It's these very large containerized battery energy storage solutions. And these things are capable, when combined into what we call a battery farm, they're capable of running a city. They're capable of
Wow.
running a very large mine. Now, can you imagine if all large businesses were able to afford a large battery energy storage solution, a containerized solution, which can run their business during load shedding or during any other outage, during cable theft, etc., or just to reduce their cost? And if they were incentivized for that, so there have been incentives over the last year and a bit for that, that needs to be increased and expanded. And this, in fact, is what has driven this huge trend towards behind the meter power, private sector power. 5,000 megawatts, as I said before, and that needs to increase. And the way that can be accelerated is by expanded government incentives. And this is where we have to, this is the time to put pressure on political parties to make that part of their policy.
Absolutely. Anything else you would like to share with us before we let you go? I'm also thinking, and I'm not sure if this next question would fall under the ambit of your expertise. But we're seeing that local municipalities are urging householders to install prepaid electricity meters. How does that fit into the grander scheme of things regarding power supply is concerned?
Look, it doesn't, in terms of the actual usage, it doesn't make any much difference. The reason municipalities are doing this, and something that we often encounter, and we've engaged with many municipalities in this regard, is that they want some revenue protection. So it's a prepaid instead of postpaid. So before any power is used, they're getting their money up front. And this is the primary motivator behind municipalities. But I think one of the most important things we need to rethink and relook at in this country is the role that municipalities are playing, utilizing electricity as a source of income to subsidize all kinds of other activities, other services. And I think this is having a fundamentally negative impact on the economy. The fact that we are using electricity and inflating the prices at municipal level in order to subsidize other services is negatively affecting the whole economy. And this needs to be relooked at. So I think that's probably one of the most important changes that any government needs to make going forward. But it's an enormous task, because municipalities will definitely kick back, and the unions will certainly kick back on that.
And finally, still sticking with the meters, is it more expensive for the consumer, or is it really at the end of the day, it equalizes whether you have a prepaid meter or not?
That's a good question. If you are, if a consumer is using a certain amount of kilowatt hours above a threshold, and that threshold varies at each municipality, then the price is about the same, and you're not being negatively affected. However, if a consumer has a very low energy usage, then the effective price is higher, because what happens is that their service charges, the demand charges, all of that are lumped into the tokens that they need to buy. So from day one, you're paying a lot more, and you don't really recoup that by using more kilowatt hours. And this is the problem that low energy users face with prepaid meters.
Okay, Mohammed Madhi, energy expert and CEO at Sinan Energy. Thank you so very much for your input this morning. I hope to have many more discussions with you in the future regarding our energy woes. What else can I say? Go well, and thank you indeed.
Thank you. Shukran.
10:13 exactly, news and views wrapping up. Thank you indeed for staying with me a little over time. Do appreciate it. A shout out to our two producers, and that is you, Abdusalam, behind the control boards, and content producer Nasrin Naidu. From me till Monday morning at the same time, as always, take care on the roads. Hope you've enjoyed all the discussions. And it is Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz till the next time.